paper roughly a week beforehand. And that's in good time as far as the decisions about the 2018 fiscal year. And then whatever the Parks recommends has to go to the board, and the board will make a decision. That will be a final decision, and will be required for the project to be built into the budget for the coming year.
Just a process question.
Sure.
I don't know if you know the answer, but so so staff would Sylvia be writing a report with one recommendation to the Parks Committee, or would it still have two recommended?
My understanding is that it will have a final recommendation, and it may be one or the other, or it might be a mix. One of the complaints that was made last Monday, based on a bit of misunderstanding, was that Metro Parks didn't listen to us. There's no change made in this report from last March or April, whenever it was released. The change will be reflected in the report that goes forward to Parks in, I expect, October.
And then when it goes to Parks could either accept the recommendation, not accept the recommendation, substitute its own
Yeah.
decision, and then when it goes to the Metro board,
Yeah.
they could accept, not accept, substitute their own decision as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no further public consultation going to occur.
That's my understanding.
Right, because I was one of the people that was involved in that consultation process and also watched the entire session. And it was only one of our councillors who mentioned the fact that there was a very strong consensus in favor during the public consultation process for a third option.
That's actually, you actually don't know that, because the public consultation process went beyond that specific information session that was held on the boardwalk. So the results of the public consultation will be reflected in the report that Sylvia presents. You're right that there was one councillor who mentioned that. All of the councillors and all of the Metro staff were well aware of the outcome of that information session.
Okay, because it just, we're going to have to deal with this, some of our work.
I know.
This follows on the heel of the BC Ferries so-called public consultation, which resulted in absolutely no change from what they had already decided to do. And now, if we find out that the recommendation that comes out of this is recommendation 2, and there is again no mention of what I thought, and almost all of the people that I've spoken to who attended that session agreed there was a clear consensus in that room, judging by all of the dots that were on that option.
That was the workshop later on, yes.
That was the workshop.
The workshop at Bix.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just going to leaves a very strong anti-government feeling in the hearts and minds of the citizens when there is a so-called public consultation process that occurs, and then, what seemed to be the consensus of people during that process turns out to be completely different from what the recommendation.
I guess I can only come back to, we don't actually know what the outcome of this is going to be. And we're not going to know that for a while yet.
You really think that there is given what we heard last Monday in that presentation, where it was clear they were asking for council's thoughts on those 2 recommendations,
They were.
you really think that they were actively thinking about a third option and still coming to council to talk about the first 2?
I think they were actively thinking about what their final option is going to be. And I very much doubt that it would be the third option that some members of our community would like to see. They've wanted to see that for a very, very long time and have gotten no traction. So, I mean, I've been called on not being clear about what my position is in this, and I actually have been clear, which is that I think that there are people on this island who would be happy to see every single cottage raised, and that there are people on this island who would like to see every single cottage protected, and that Metro is in a very difficult position of having to come up with some sort of compromise that's going to work for this community and that's going to work for all of the other communities that are part of Metro Vancouver and that are funding this, and who do respect heritage.
I understand that, and I actually appreciate the process. But what I'm saying is that if that in fact is what they were thinking, then I think the onus was on the people who did the workshop to say at that time that, or maybe we'll see it in the final report, finally an acknowledgement that while we would love to save all 10 cottages, we don't have the budget for it.
They have said that.
They didn't say that at the workshop,
They have said that in prior meetings,
because,
They had the budget?
that they do not have the budget for it.
well, that isn't the sense
I
that I
mean,
got.
I don't want to bust your balloon, but you're not going to get anything from it. 5 years ago, I offered to rebuild all of those cottages at my cost. And I'm an architect and I can do it much cheaper than anyone else because I was also the owner and builder. So, and we could do it with our people, the way they wanted to. I even agreed to do it the way the historians wanted to, which was a pain in the ass. That shouldn't have been. That's what caused this whole problem in the first place.
Yeah.
They tried to get too historical, and they cost them like $100,000
Right.
a cottage, and they could have been built for $50,000 and gotten the same effect.
Yeah.
Yes, it didn't.
I've read that report. Yes,
You know,
I agree.
and someone, and I don't know, from this group, asked for a freedom of information. They wanted to look at my bid. It's all open. She's got a copy. You can share it with the group if you want to. It was, I was sitting on $500,000 ready to do this. They didn't respond for over 3 years. And so I finally gave up and started building my docks and used the money there.
Yeah.
And you see the boathouse now.
Yeah.
You're not going to get anything from them. They're not going to do anything. I doubt that they, other than the cottages that they have, they'll spend any money to do anything. I'm sorry to be the bad news purveyor.
I think
but
my
that's
balloon was burst a
reality.
long time ago on this one.
I was listening to an interview with an artist on CBC Radio about a couple of days ago. And it was a really interesting interview, and he was being asked about the challenges that he faced. And the line that he came back with was, "You've all heard the saying, if you can't beat them, join them." Right? And he said, "My saying is, if you can't beat them, join them, then beat them." And I think that's actually a really interesting idea. If you think in terms of Metro Vancouver staff having a bunch of hurdles that they need to get through in order to accommodate the interests of 20 other municipalities, a Treaty First Nation and an electoral area, and to get the money to put in a basic response to that site. And then maybe think about what more we can do. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I mean, I'm waiting to see what happens with the decision-making at Parks, and to be honest, it could go anyway. And at the board, same thing. You know, the Metro staff came with an approved option from the Parks Committee, and the board flipped it. Now, it was not what was approved, but that was what came out of the board decision.
Mm-hmm.
And it's their land. They're working within the zoning that's permitted.
Mm-hmm.
They have gone through what they consider to be an extremely robust, I hate the word, but an extremely robust public consultation process that they can justify to
Okay.
the committee and the board.
I agree.
people-
I
the
don't
people-
think we're gonna get any further on this one.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna
No.
get any further. And I'm not so much concerned about the process as I am at what I thought was a lack of authenticity and transparency when we went to that workshop. Because they did not squelch the possibility of a third option there. Maybe you talked to different people than I did.
Were
The
you
people that
were you at both meetings, the first and the second? When did you attend the workshop? Was it last year or this year?
This year.
Yes.
Was it this year's? Okay.
Yeah.
I think what came out of it was very clearly that everybody preferred option 3, but we discussed the pros and cons and everything that could be possible with the cottages that were going to be saved.
Mhm.
And I agree that one addendum could have been put onto the report.
Yeah.
Well, the report really is to come, and that's really important
Well,
to remember.
maybe it will say that at the conclusion, it seemed to be that everybody would like to have as many cottages as possible saved.
I would just like to say that we're talking about a robust process or a reasonable process. In my view, it's not a robust process or a reasonable one unless in Metro's staff's report, they honestly and fully account for the views expressed by the community in that process.
Exactly.
So that is to come.
Okay.
What
What
Your
Peter will
ex-
do.
I don't have a copy of your.
No, that I'm not talking about. What infuriates me is the design that they've come up with. The trails are in the wrong place to bring people up. They have absolutely a beautiful sculpture up there, a bronze one of kids shooting marbles. And they've got it in absolutely the wrong place. It's sort of sitting out in the middle of an open field. It should be down to encourage people to come up or down along the boardwalk further down or in a, it's just, I don't know how all that stuff got placed, but it's very awkward and not a good design.
Well, again, coming back to, this is sort of from community center work, I mean, with that, we're at conceptual and then into schematic design. There are all sorts of different stages of design, and I think that they can address those concerns as this goes forward. I would certainly hope they would. I'm sure that we're not going to be quiet about things that we're not happy about. So as it stands, by the end of the year, I think we'll know, what the plan is there. In terms of the budget, the 1.3 million, they allocate on an annual basis roughly $6 million for new capital projects. So if you think in terms of they're considering putting 1.3 million into the Davies Orchard and they only spend 6 million across the entire system, that gives you some indication of the importance of the investment from their perspective. And I mean, you could argue that, well, that's like, if you consider all the years when there wasn't significant maintenance done, were we just playing catch up there? But they are prepared to play catch up. Or at least staff is prepared to make that recommendation.
If the issue, and I'm not sure if it is, but if the primary issue is budget, then I wonder if Metro would be willing to look at other options to save more cottages if there was more money on the table coming from somewhere.
I don't think it's only budget. I think it has to do with park mandate. It has to do with precedent in other parks. There are other parks that have heritage buildings, and they're all kind of unique in their own way. They have a challenge in convincing some members of the committee and some members of the board that heritage is part of the remit of parks. So we'll find out. You're thinking, Melissa.
I just wanted to ask how it's related, but not directly to our point, so I hope it's okay to ask now about the building use policy that they were working on, whatever it's called now.
Hasn't come forward again.
Right, did
From
you
Parks.
see a draft or you just had an oral presentation? I know it was coming onto the agenda.
We saw a draft,
Okay.
yeah. And given the way the drafts work, it will be a while before there's
Okay.
anything firm. It's probably something that will be
Do you remember what the
approved in
date of that?
2018.
Do you remember the date of that meeting?
Would be June or,
Yeah.
yeah, probably.
Big deal on the agenda.
But
There
it's
was-
very preliminary.
There was a write-up in the Undercurrent about, about the presentation to council and some of the comments. And one of the comments that had been attributed to the Metro planners was that, you know, in light, you know, there was no, I can't remember the word, something, it wasn't coherent, but something like that, no coherent plan for the use of the cottages. And
Are you referring to Judy Getty's letter?
no, I'm referring to the write-up in the, you know, the editorial
Okay.
in the Undercurrent. It was on the first page
Okay.
of the last issue. And there was something about a comment being like, in light of there being no coherent plan for the use of all 10 cottages, that wasn't a sustainable plan. And I find that ironic because of Metro Parks policy, which it doesn't favor uses that are seen as too exclusive, used by only, you know, single, you know, let's say it's the occupant or something like that, when really the thing is that these cottages were designed for vacation rentals. They're designed for family occupancy for vacation rentals, and the best way, this probably shouldn't be in the record, but I was talking to Sherry Oliver
Well,
about.
it is on video.
Yeah, so anyway, so maybe I shouldn't say. But I was talking to somebody about that really the best use to support arts and culture and the economy of the island is really to have those cottages available for public, for short-term rentals for the public, and because there's a shortage of accommodation on the island, especially right around the cove. And so really that is the use that those cottages should be put to. And what the Metro policy does is catch-22, it makes it impossible to use them for that use.
Yeah.
And so we've been struggling to find some other use or uses that might be a coherent use and going against the grain, because that's all we have left in terms of the options.
Actually, it's
Yeah.
not all we have left, and some of the other uses even in our cottages, we have a museum. There are museums in other metro parks. We have a non-profit organization that is doing park-related work, broadly defined, the Heritage Association, which effectively does have exclusive use of that cottage. There have been sort of what are referred to as informal uses, such as Bob Bates and, you know, his studio down there. Metro is well aware of the use that's been put to, and short-term rental. But there is debate over whether short-term rental is an appropriate use in a public park. You know, and you can see it when somebody's sitting out there having their barbecue and enjoying, you know, a public park, having paid their money to be there. Aren't you?
Yeah. As you know, we rent them out on a daily basis because we think that that's the best use, is to get people in them to use them so that they can enjoy the park. We only do 2. We could have 4 immediately if they wanted them. But the historians keep them as a display. We've said that we can take the display unit and do it at least summer because there's no insulation. And, you know, I think it would be a premium, not a lower one, because it would be the old classic. They could do that with all of them if they wanted. What doesn't work over the years, and I've been there and seen them, is renting them to artists. Now, they have 1, 2 maybe that are still artists. What happens is the artists become artists, and they paint the outside black and white, or start chopping up rooms and doing all artist things in them, and it's really defeating the purpose of the historicals. But they can put that out to, it doesn't have to be me who functions or runs them, they put it out yearly, or maybe it's every 3 or 4 years, I can't remember what their contract is, but it's open to anyone that wants to run it.
But to your point though, in that meeting on Monday, it was pretty clear that they just don't want to go there for short-term rentals.
Know that they, in option 2, they're still retaining 2 short-term rentals.
Okay.
And in option 1 is 1 short-term rental. So the point that they made at the meeting on Monday is that the uses of these cottages, and I think that this is a really important point, the uses of those cottages could evolve over time. And that, I think that went by people.
Okay. Went by me.
I know, I'll just throw
I'm
this out.
listening for new
For the
stuff.
4 cottages that they're proposing to be demolished and turned into plinths, those 4 cottages could just as well be turned over to a third-party operator to restore and operate as vacation rentals as Ronde's 2 are. So there's more, and with no budget implication to Metro. So again, it's
They
clearly
turned that
not
down.
budget. Yeah.
They set it up for
yeah.
3 years, but
Yeah.
they never answered my bid. And there were other bids, no telling what the other bids were. You know, they asked for suggestions to do in the park. I know one of them was to put a big bandstand in, in the center of it, and I don't know what the others were. Do you?
No, those were not shared with, at the time I was with Bowen Heritage, and they weren't shared with Bowen Heritage.
But once they're demolished, there's no evolving use. It's, that's game over for those.
Well, let me scare you. Their original plan, when we were developing ours and theirs at the same time, they wanted to put a hotel in.
I read some of those reports, yeah.
I mean, economically, it would have made sense for them to.
Anyway,
So I think we need to leave, I think we need to leave this agenda item and.
It has been going on for 25 years.
yes.
Feels like it.
Feels like it is.
Subcommittee reports, is there anything in particular that we need to address here? I don't think there actually is.
I don't think that's a good idea.
So, organization updates, 6.1 Bowen Heritage, Applefest.
And first,
Woo-hoo! Yes, and that is on the the Sunday of the
Sunday Thanksgiving,
Thanksgiving, which is
6th.
the 8th of October. Good fun.
What's the date for it?
Applefest.
The date.
October 8th.
Sunday,
October 8th.
October 8th.
And what are the hours gonna be?
I believe 11 to 2.
Sorry?
11 to 2,
Okay.
yeah. Have you heard about bringing your Apple display yet?
Yes, it's been mentioned.
Great.
Yeah.
Duplicated over.
So anything more from Bowen Heritage? Museum and Archives, holy smokes, you cleaned up a lot over the summer.
Yes, we've, we're kind of running out of money though, quick, but, so we still have to raise money to proceed further. One of the, so just to let you know what we've done so far is, we put up the banner in the back and the planters and stuff, and we've had some of the plants missing from us already. Oh, yes, yes, I've been warned. As soon as you start fixing something up, people start, messing with it. The other thing too is we put in a culvert, which was quite expensive as well. And that was like $11,500 with all the work and soil we had to bring in and stuff like that.
And now someone's made off with the culvert.
Well, it's interesting you should say that. You do this, and then I had Bruce Culver come in and seeded the stuff for us and put in a lawn. And as soon as all that was done, people are using the cut to avoid that corner. Are driving right up on our septic field, driving right across, and I've been dealing with ruts and it's unbelievable. it's, the kind of abuse that can go on, but, you know, it can be stopped. I can just put, you know, a couple of little concrete blocks.
Where are they going?
So they're going through the front on Miller's Road, they're driving right into our parking lot, driving right over top of our septic field,
Wow.
over to the Telus parking lot. So that cuts out that entire corner.
No
Wow.
kidding.
Sorry about that.
Whoa!
I recommended that you fill that in.
No, and it's fine. I mean, there's an easy solution.
Maybe the
You
muni
just
has a
put in
mentioned
a couple of concrete,
barriers.
you know,
Planters.
a couple spike belts or something, and stomp them.
Heritage spike belts.
But no, so it can be, but it's amazing how quickly people catch on to something and take advantage of that. But anyways, so we've spent a lot of money, especially, and the tree, there was a couple of rotted trees. They really were, they had to come down, they were hazardous trees. And then we had to do some limbing up, but that was $6,500 too. It was.
It's expensive taking down trees.
It was expensive because we had so many vines growing up that when they cut the limbs, they just hung. So a half, I mean, it was, you know what? It was one of those things where the property was so unkept for so long, it was bound to, you know, happen. So the bottom line moving forward is a couple big things. Is the sewer's just about done. I have to find out what the situation is with the cost of the sewer to us to connect. I'm hoping there's something reasonable that, because I've heard a bunch of different stories, how much it can cost us.
What was the high end that you heard?
Upwards of $30,000.
No.
And then I hear, it depends who you talk to, and it doesn't seem anybody has a handle on.
You need to speak with the municipality.
But the last time I talked to Kathy, I think it was early July, and she's, you know, and they said, there's a cost sharing. We can waive the $10,000 hookup fee, but because this is a new line, that you guys have to share the cost of installing this, which, you know, until we get the final costs in, but that can be anywhere from 25 to 30, 35, you know, we don't know. So that's scary, because it's pretty generous on one end. But I heard years ago, we were part of the original existing sewer line connection, our properties, the museum and archives as well as the Telus. And we were only meant to be paying a $10,000 hookup fee, which may be waived. I've heard this from some counselors, but this whole other fee is and that's a roadblock, you know.
So Rob, this is to run pipe from the line that they're running up the road
Right.
to the building, and then the
Yes.
hookup is just to hook it into your.
Yes.
Okay.
So in
So
order
that's-
for us to hook up, what's been communicated to me from the municipality is that there's a cost sharing for installing
For about
that
100
line.
feet of pipe, about 100 feet of line.
Yeah.
Yeah, the library's looking at the same issue right now.
Well, all
So-
those houses along the street must be.
Yeah.
That's if they choose to hook up.
But but in our case, why, you know, we got some members of our board would suggest, well, forget it, just stick with our septic. But in my opinion, and I think the majority of the board's opinion, but that's not an option. Is because we have an older septic field. We plan on building a lot in that area. Also, for any future expansion of the building, there's going to be setbacks to deal with, you know. And even if we did install a new septic field, we have two giant cedar trees that the roots are crossing right across it. The timing, we need to get on that sewer system, and that way it alleviates any kind of restrictions and taking out more trees, and it's the responsible thing to do. So that's the biggest thing that we're dealing with right now. and then raising sewer money and then getting the rest done. I mean, the plan's there, it's been approved by the municipality unanimously. So we got all the green lights. We've got the contract signed by TELUS. It's just need a little bit more money, and we need to deal with this sewer situation, and then we can move on and get it done.
Well, what you've done so far, that's great.
Oh, it does, but
The space is so much more open.
I think it's an improvement, but it's a small fraction of what it's gonna get done, that's the thing. It's just a small fraction, it's gonna be such a huge improvement. I just don't want it to stall, I don't want this to consume the rest of my life, you know. It's-
Not 25 years, huh?
No, not 25 years.
I have to
Sorry.
express, I have to compliment you on your fundraising activities, like the beer, the
Well-
Suns
Yes.
thing, and the
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 I'm-
antique, the antique.
Well, this is the only
car
thing we
show.
really got out of it, because it didn't raise us any.
Oh,
A tradition, though, you can build on.
Well, this is it. It's our first year out of the gates, and there's many things we could have done better, but we broke even. You know, we didn't make a lot of money, but it was.
You have PPP coming up this year, though.
Yes, but once again, those funds go towards operational costs. Like a lot of people think, for example, we get a grant from municipality, we get a BC gaming grant, that 100% of those funds goes towards the staffing, which we could use twice as many hours if you really looked at it. But all the other money, the sort of operational costs and maintenance and everything else, that comes from money we raise. And it's a necessity, so I don't want to be diverting that it sort of impedes our operation of the organization, so. Yes.
Just to update you, I don't know which system the muni is going to charge you on, but they can go in and charge you for that hookup now, even if you don't hook it up. Or they don't, and then you'll have to pay a latecomer's fee, which would need to be higher, because it would build up all the various interests on it. So you're better off just to hook it up now.
Oh, that's what, I'm 100% that way. I don't think it's much of a choice, it's the thing to do. Otherwise, if we decided to say no, we're building upon something that's gonna cause us future issues. Yeah, I don't think there's a choice. I think we have to. So I might be approaching council at some point, so I have to, but I'm gonna talk to Kathy one more time and sort of get a better feel. But having said that, the other big news with our organization is unfortunately Jack Little is moving off the island. So we've just lost our vice president, and it's a huge loss for us. There's no doubt about it. He was really good to work with, and he added a lot of value to our organization. So it's tough.
it's a huge loss for our work too, because
Yes.
90% of the research
Yeah.
that went into the
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
draft register
He
was
did
Jack, and I
all
don't
the
know what we're
research.
gonna do
I
without
don't know
Jack.
what we're gonna do with that.
Yeah.
He's still gonna be in Vancouver. We can transfer.
Yeah, we can
Oh, yes.
somehow
Yeah,
get
he's
it.
not in shackles.
To Skype.
And he has offered to help us out from, time to time, but it's never the same. It's
No,
like,
it's not.
Are they going to Vancouver? I thought they were going to.
No, they're going to
Hornby.
Hornby.
They haven't.
Well,
Hornby.
they
But
haven't-
they're gonna have a,
He bought a
place
condo
in
in
Vancouver.
Yaletown.
Yeah.
he's got a condo in Yaletown he bought just last week.
Okay.
And then their next step is to look for what's available in Hornby.
That's correct.
Or Summer
Yeah.
Cottage. So he's around.
Yeah.
It's too much, his big property in Bowen, he says, just too much work.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Arts Council, Dave, anything you wanna?
Just a couple of things. Thank you to the council for approving the cultural plan. It gave it first, second, and third reading at the last council meeting, and there are some things, as I mentioned before, but I will recirculate the latest draft of that in the cultural plan that relate to heritage, specifically things like leaving the Heritage Walk and First Nations and cultural heritage events. And in addition to that, the Arts Council has been working with somebody, I don't know who it is, in the Squamish First Nations and the government to collaborate with them on I believe there's 7 projects all told over the next year or two that relate to recommendations that came from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And some of those might also have some heritage implications. So I'm going to get a list of those and send them around. I know there was going to be, yesterday in fact, there was going to be a heritage tour of the Squamish Estuary,
Yes.
which was canceled due to the weather. And, but that will be rescheduled. And there's another event coming up, I think, in 2 weeks' time, and I can't recall what it is. But, so, to the extent that there are things going on that reflect our First Nations heritage, we're kind of going ahead and working on that with the Arts Council, and if there are things that are specifically heritage related, we'll probably be talking with this group about them to see whether we can get you involved.
That sounds great.
That's
You've
it.
also got some legs under the Land Art Initiative.
Yeah, it's interesting. Its next meeting is, I think, Thursday. There's a considerable number of people who are interested in land art, and there are 6 people that we know of on Bowen Island who have some experience in creating land art, kind of in a professional capacity. So there's a fair amount of interest in it. How we weave that into the whole heritage thing is what intrigues me, because there's a lot of moving parts. There's the Cross Island Trail, possibility of that becoming part of the Spirit Trail, and the opportunities for us to do some things together that involve both the arts and heritage. So I think there's some interesting possibilities.
I saw something, sorry, I want to interject for a second, David. There was, did you guys go to that Vintage Motor Show? It was a fundraiser for us, but Rafe Groen put it on. Okay. Well, he had a lot of art interspersed between all the vintage cars, and he did. It was amazing.